Hello, I am Mbweha. You can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this is an update to the unit comparison tool that I have made available to everybody who plays Star Wars Legion. And I just mainly wanted to, number one, say that it's updated for the new points. But I also am going to take a little bit of time to go through it. I haven't looked at all the data yet that's in there, and so if you want to look through it with me, then continue watching. And if you want to just look through it by yourself, then you can click the link that will take you to the unit comparison tool. And I don't know, I'll probably have one or two hot takes, but anyway, we're going to get started here right away with looking at the unit comparison tool in Star Wars Legion. So let's do it. Alrighty, so this is always available through our website. You can always get here from the Team Relentless website, and the link is in the video description as well. I did update it just now, just now meaning a few days ago, quietly. And then this is a brief description. I'm not going to read all this to you. If you aren't aware of the tool, I think probably the most important thing to note on it is this right here. This tool is not made to say that something is best or worst. It's not to be used as evidence that someone else is like wrong, and we don't use it to whine about the game. We use it to learn and to grow, and to help us build better lists and ask good questions about list building through it. And if you really don't like it, hey man, that's totally cool. Just still look at it. Just move along. Move along. All right, so it's organized down here by the different sheets. So we're going to jump into the core section. I've got it, since I have full access, I'm actually like changing the rows as I sort things. If you want to be able to sort things, you got to just kind of click up here, I believe, or actually click on row 3, and then find the little filter tool and create a temporary filter here. But I have currently everything sorted by the most efficient defensive rating per points, right? So efficiency with the defense, and then by faction. So we can see that, like, in just strictly speaking as a faction, still just naked B1s are the cheapest way to get defensive rating on the board, followed up by B2s with a heavy, specifically the ACM, and then a personnel of some sort, including if the T-Series, it's still really efficient. Nothing really here changed. They did make some updates to the B1 points to try to make the naked ones a little bit less good and incentivize taking the heavy upgrades, and that's fine. I think that, you know, I look at this and I still think, wow, droids have really great core options, as kind of the short of it. Looking at Empire, the cheapest way to get wounds on the table, to get defense on the table, is Stormtroopers, you can see. And then followed closely by Snows with Del Miko, actually, because he's cheaper now. And so that jumped to the top. I don't necessarily know that I'd really run Del with Snows, but it is a cheap way to get stuff out there. And then the Snow T7 with a personnel slot, outstanding value, and Snows Gideon. So Snows are really good. I wonder if anyone is in Vader League running a bunch of Snows right now. It's me. Before the points change, actually. So anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, you can see defensively, Shores are the worst for Empire Core, but the reason why is because they have the best firepower rating. So that's well balanced. I think Empire Core is looking good. And then, as we all know, clones are kind of sad right now. This doesn't take into account any token sharing at all, and so you have to take that with a grain of salt. That, of course, that it's not taking that into account, and so yeah, it could be better. And then with Rebels, you can still see the naked Rebels, naked fleets are great to take as far as the defense goes. And then the Mark II medium blaster, because I put it up at 4 health, is really cheap too. Cheap way to get wounds on the table, which is why you do see a lot of people run a lot of Mark II medium blasters with veterans, like naked veterans. Like they don't even bother. It looks like, do I not have naked veterans in here? Looks like I don't have naked veterans in here. That's a mistake. I should add that. It's because I have this huge bias that I think that you should always run the CMO 93 with it, because it is so good on offense that I think it's a bad idea to run them naked. But if you're really tight on points and you just need to get Mark IIs out there because you're doing stuff with Wookiees and you're doing stuff with the speeder truck, it does make sense. But so I'll probably fix that at some point and put that there. If we just want to look at like, hey, what's got the most efficient firepower rating across all factions? We see Snows and Delmico, Rebel Vets, the CM90, good old Stormtrooper DLT is up high at the top too, etc. So you can see good efficiency from most factions. Gar not up here again because a lot of what Gar does best has to do with synergy between units and command cards and things like that, which just isn't reflected here. And yes, they also took, they didn't get their points adjusted down like Empire did and things like that. So is what it is. This is kind of interesting. Last thing on this page, fleets for melee, like they've got a weak melee rating, but as far as like that cost, it ends up being surprisingly good. But it's not as good as the best melee rating is if you've got Snows or anything that has surge, and then you fill it out with personnel, ends up actually being a pretty decent melee pool. I mean, six black surge to hit sounds like a lightsaber minus the pierce. So, kind of an interesting thing. Okay, I'm gonna put things back the way they were. You can sort them how you want. So that's core. Nothing mind-blowing going on there with the updates. This has been sorted the same way. So let's look at each faction. Look at the defensive efficiency. We see that the new Magna Guards that are coming out are great. They're very wounds efficient. I think I'm going to start by taking them with the whip. It's the least efficient of those options, but it's still very efficient. I mean, it's a big boost to add that additional model. And then the other special forces options for droids really are not very good on defense. Even like the shield sniper or the build is not great. So that, is what it is. But you can see over here the reason why is because they are all of their point value is really in their attack rating. So, and lots of good melee stuff over there. Okay, jumping down to Empire. This surprised me. So because they dropped the price of DTF-16 so much and gave her 2 health, that's really cheap to get. It's 87 points to have 5 wounds on the table that are 2/3. 6 wounds on the table that are 2/3 saves. So think of that as like it's better than Palpatine, right? Because he's got 5 health and has 2/3 saves. Six saves at the but of course not immune to pierce and attrition and stuff like that matters. But yeah, and the firepower rating is really decent too. So I had written DTF-16 off, but because of this tool, I'm thinking I might see what I can do with that. That's an interesting thing because she's got Compel. She likes to engage at range 3 and closer. So what kind of lists also like to engage within range 3? She'd love to be at range 2 or 1 and use the grenade launcher too, of course. So anyway, that was interesting. More efficient even than IRG, but of course not as efficient in melee. So unsurprisingly, seeing IRG come in near the top for Empire. Scouts, surprisingly, because they're 48 points, an efficient way to get wounds out there, but then still, their firepower rating, I understand that their attack pool is good, but only having it out to range 2 is pretty harsh. And then absolute garbage in melee. I mean, Han, he gently throws one against a tree and it knocks him out. Anyway, so yeah, and then DTs, and then you start getting into things that are less efficient. The strike teams and the ISF as far as their defense go, but they tend to be way more efficient on offense. If you're looking at this and are thinking, well, there's no way that Inferno Squad should be way higher with that, or ISF should be way higher. It's because this doesn't reflect command cards. So Tactical Strike improves ISF by 1 million. And there's no accurate way to reflect that here. Okay, this looks like it's small, and it's because all the Wookiees are down lower. So I'll jump down to the Wookiees here. Arc snipers are still outstanding firepower rating, but less so for defense for their cost. And yes, I don't have like Echo or Fives attached to these because I don't. Okay, swinging down here to the Wookiees. So this is both Rebels and and clones. There's a I apologize for the annoying letters. It's not my fault, as Han and Lando would say. FF is the Freedom Fighters. That's the original Rebel ones that came out, and the GAR equivalent is the Noble Fighters. So if it has fighters in the name, they're the melee ones. Oh no, excuse me. If it has fighters in the name, if it has fighters in the name, they're the melee ones. And they're mirrors of each other. They're totally the same between Rebels and droids, except for the picture. And then the new ones that are like shooty boys are the Kashyyyk Resistance for Rebels and the Kashyyyk Defenders. I think that's what it is for GAR. So if it says Kashyyyk in the name, then they want to stay at range. I don't know how we're gonna. I don't have a clever way of remembering that yet, but that's what they are. And again, they're mirrors of each other. So you basically have Wookiees that are built for melee now and Wookiees that are built for range. The most, unsurprisingly, the most defensively efficient ones are the ones with the shield. So when you put the shield on the melee focused ones, they're great. They don't shoot that great because, again, I understand that their dice pool at range 1 and 2 is pretty good. But this is taking into account the fact that they don't get to make those shots all that time. They'd rather be in melee. And they have great, you can throw tenacity on them especially, great melee ratings. Now, I really wanted to know about the bowcaster again versus the long gun on the new ones. So that's let's see, here's long gun, here's bowcaster for these new ones. And you can see that, excuse me. I apologize, but I muted myself, so no one has to hear me cough. Okay, the long gun is a little bit cheaper, which is why it's got a slightly better defensive efficiency, but it's not very significant. I mean, it's 5 points. And then I do rate it as having just a barely better firepower rating, but not enough to really. The reason why it's a little bit higher is because it can fire at range 4. But it doesn't have Pierce. So this player's opinion is that the bowcaster is the way to go because it's not very often that you're only going to fire at range 4. Like, you really want those Wookiees to be in range 3 so you can get the whole attack pool with their new carbine that's, I think, 2 white. And then when you add another red and a white, from the bowcaster and have Pierce 1 plus the versatility of impact in the armor heavy vehicle heavy meta that we've got right now, armor heavy meta. I think the bowcaster is the way to go personally, but you do you. Okay, lastly, the other rebel units, commandos coming down in price. It's a cheap way to get wounds on the table. They're sort of almost like a slightly better core troop. I was talking with Nemo, with Nashjay, about this the other night, and we were hypothesizing about, you know how there's all those lists that pay a rebel core tax, and you just got 3 naked rebel troopers or fleet troopers, a combination thereof, so that you can have like really fleshed out special forces units. What if you used these naked commandos to have a better than average naked core unit as your special forces, and then fleshed out your core so that it's really robust? Basically, so you could have a rebel gun line. I don't know that it's better than having a bunch of either Mandos or Wookiees or Pathfinders, but it's interesting to think about. So I've been thinking about it. Speaking of Mandalorians, I mean, outstanding defensive rating, unsurprisingly. I think it is correct to always take situational awareness on Clan Ren. Sometimes people feel like they've got to have that offensive push on them because they want the rocket, and I don't think it's worth that. The rocket maybe, but not offensive push over situational awareness. I do put offensive push on the Mandos. Not with Ursa. I don't put Ursa and Tristan on the Mandos. Usually I have just a regular a duelist like this, but without SA. It's with Opush. So you can see here it does drop their defensive efficiency, but having Opush is really nice on them. Poor Pow. Lost a wound, left it behind on Scarif. That's too bad for him. But they dropped the point, so it's still like it's kind of in line. It's fine. And the Biston build is, the Biston build is better. But if you want to run both, like Pow's not bad. So anyway, okay. I said that we were going to look at cross-faction analysis too a little bit. We can see that the best way to hit things real hard for cheap is the BX snipers, according to this, and the arc snipers and the scout sniper. It's the strike teams still. They're cheap. They can shoot far. They got Pierce. Low profile just got better, which I understand doesn't affect all of them, but some of them. So anyway, that's cool. And then the commandos of the sniper being that high are interesting. I don't know that I'd pay 76 points for that still, but someone try it, and if it works, cool, make it a thing, and then we'll follow you into the new meta of full commando snipers. And then again, that Biston build is great. So yeah, that's kind of where things land here for pewing. Note that that's different than like if you just want the highest firepower rating, you've got arc snipers, full BX snipers with shields, full DTs with DLTs. Like those are big pools, but you're paying over 100 points for them. So just got to keep that in mind. Lots of people running melee these days, so let's look at that too. If you are running a melee skew, just BX swords, cheap way to get them out there. And the Wookiees, the melee focused Wookiees with the shield, or without the shield, which is, I mean, if you're tight on points, the shield does cost a lot of points, and they still are a big, hairy furball threat without the shield. So, yeah. Oddly, this is funny to me. It's just because they're so cheap, and they do throw enough dice that, anyway, the fact that the DRKs are considered efficient for melee is what it is. Whatever, it's fine. And then the biggest melee attack pool, it's again the Wookiees and the snipers and everything. So no big surprises there. Pretty interesting stuff, in my opinion. All right, 3 more real quick. Support, lots of new support units. So we'll see some new things right here. You can see that spider droids are instantly at the top. Spider with the defensive protocol at the top for cheap wounds on the table. 58 points. 58 points for a defensive rating of 14 is, for comparison, let's jump back to like core. So what's something else that's got a defensive rating of around 14? I mean, so the B2s, which have a defensive rating of 15, cost 82 points. So it's way cheaper for only, 1 defensive rating lower comparatively. So the defensive rating build, I'm imagining, first of all, you're thinking, why are you running these naked? It's because they're just supposed to get in the way and blow things up and kick people. Like they can just, with the defensive protocol, that gives them outmaneuver, and it gives them a dodge. Well, it gives them access to dodges through AI. So the idea with these, in my mind, is that you just slowly move them up, and if your opponent doesn't do anything about them, they're going to either self-destruct if they don't fully bring them down, or they're going to sit on objectives. So that's cool, in my opinion. The thing that I'm nervous about with the spider droids, if you wanted to build like a suicide squad of spider droids, is just remember that if they blow up, they hit your stuff too. So if you have a cluster of spider droids, and we'll see how that plays out. The engagement protocol is 2 more points than the defensive or attack protocols, and it's what lets you move. So it's AI move. So they can move twice easily without an order and really get into position. So that's them. Droideka got dropped in points again, I think. I can't remember. Maybe they didn't get touched. I can't keep track of every change. But I like Droideka where they are. You can see that because Staps got touched up with their points, I think Droideka are, I mean, strictly speaking, they're a better choice defensively and offensively. But they don't bring the same advantages for objective play. that stabs bring. But with the changes to how blue and red player works, I think we're going to see a lot fewer stabs, and we're going to see a lot more Droidica. If you want to make your spider droid attacky, notice these right here. Notice the ion and the laser are somewhat comparable in what they do. I think it's really just, do you want the ion or do you want the range of the laser? You do you. And keep in mind that if you're thinking of keeping them in the back to fire at things, if you've got other things near them and they get blown up, maybe I'm wrong about that. I think they hit everything. If they don't hit everything, please tell me in the comments, and that would change. I'm sure that they hit everything. That would be crazy if they didn't. All right, Empire. Dewbacks are still very efficient at getting wounds on the table. They always have been, but now we are seeing people have more success by combining them with Vader, because they've got a great melee skew. If there's enough of them charging at you, if you don't have the critical or the pierce or the impact to deal with their saves and to deal with their light armor, or whatever it is, armor 1, armor 2, that can be obnoxious. So that's them. Speeder bikes always look bad. Again, it's an objective piece. It's a flanking piece. It does things that are difficult to measure here. Naked speeder bikes are still fine. They're if your opponent doesn't kill them, they're probably going to lose. So they have to target them. It's a way to get fire focused on something else while something like your ISF are blowing things up. That's what my round robin Invader League list was triple speeder, triple ISF with Iden. And it worked. I went 4-1. So lost to Luke Cook, which was great. It was fun to lose to Luke. I learned from Luke. That was my goal going into that game. And I kept it as close as I could. But this isn't about that, and you don't care. So let's move on. E-webs still look bad, but they're really cheap. If you need basically a pass token that can also say, hey, look, if you step too close to this, it's going to light you up. And for 55 points, that's a pretty good deal to light you up. Then I would, do that. And of course, if you put barrage or overcharge on them, it gets significantly better, especially if they can have an aim on them. So, but if your red saves fail, then it's a sad day, but whatever. Okay, Gar. Naked Bark, still really cheap. Used to be good for objective play. With blue player changes, I don't know that it matters. ATRT, same kind of story. The only new thing here is the NASP, and this is difficult to... Bombardier is new, so it's got this overrun attack. If you don't know what the overrun attack is, because you haven't checked it out yet, it basically means when you run over something, when you overrun it, they get to make a special attack. And I think it's like 2 red, 2 white, I'm pretty sure. And it's not a ranged attack, so it doesn't give suppression unless it has the suppressive keyword, which the Bombardier does, by the way. And what else is different about it? They can only drop their bombs on make an overrun attack on one of the units that they overrun. So if you run over 5 units, you can only pick 1 to attack. But the NASP does have, or the Bombardier has overrun 2, which means that it can do it twice per round. So you could and it's a speeder, right? So it can compulsory move over something and drop bombs, and then move and drop bombs and attack, because it's not a ranged attack. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. But it's I would be curious to know about that. Again, if I'm wrong, slap me around. These new units, they always have things that I do or don't know. Pretty sure they can. And then the gunner is unique because it fires out the back. I really wish I could somehow have both. This is it hurt. The dream would be man, I wish that they had innate overrun, even if it was just overrun 1, so I could drop some grenades on things, and as I fly by, gun out the back. Would just thematically be a lot of fun, but no soup for you. You don't get to do that. Yeah. Okay, moving on. The support slots for Gar are not exploding my mind, but again, we'll see what people end up doing with the NASP, because it's fast, it's cheap, it's decent wounds, and it has a very unique attack, and we'll kind of see how things settle in. Rebels, not much is changing here. Don't take the FD cannon. I mean, it's got an outstanding attack, but it doesn't get to move. So unless something about it changes significantly, maybe take one or two for fun, but it's pretty avoidable, which is rough for it. But yeah, naked ATRTs are still cheap, and they can run up and they can actually kick stuff really hard. And then because they have surge to crit, if you fire with the A300 rifle or whatever it is, like it's a decent chance of getting some random crit. So, and then the laser one is the cheapest upgrade, so that's why it's up there. Tauns still are pretty good value and very high defensive rating, and then they melee things to death. So tauns are still good. Kind of got a bad rap, I think. There was like a lot of toxicity around, oh, if you play Tawns, and then I think that was disappointing that we reacted that way in some ways, because they're fun units and they're popular, they're in the movies, and anyway. So most efficient attacks, you've got the FD because it can't move, and then you've got the Spider, which is brand new, and then E-Web and the Bark. So that's those things. And then, of course, the melee is going to be, oops, wrong direction. The Dewbacks and the Tauns, which Dewbacks I rank as better for their melee rating for points and on defense. And if you're like, well, then that's crazy. It's because it's the version that can't fire at range. And so the Tauns actually have like that really nasty sharpshooter 1 attack as well, making them a little bit more of a jack of all trades and a skirmishing unit. Okay, here we go. Heavies. New stuff in here too. Sorted by points efficiency, and then the faction again. I have the persuade. Oh, that bothers me a lot. See how this is a particular text color, and then this is not. Oh, that's gonna cause me a lot of problems here. I can't help myself. I'm one of those people. There we go. So I do have the Persuader as being the most efficient way to get heavy points on the table for droids now. And if you compare them to the AAT, they're a little bit easier to kill, but they're a little bit cheaper. They also have very comparable attack pools. The Persuader, I think, similar to the Spiders, it's got to take a protocol. I like the defensive one for putting B2s on it and just letting it roll up and saying, hey, it's going to be really hard to kill this. And once it gets in pretty close, it's got decent innate attacks. It's got an ion gun that's range 1 to 2, and then it has another better gun that's range 1 to 4. So it can be like taking pot shots as it moves eventually, and eventually it can sit there without an order and have a dodge and then pew things, all while it was moving B2s up the field, which we'll see if it works or not, but it looks good to me. And then running I put the engagement one on it in case. I think for the Persuader, it's going to come down to your order control. Like, you're going to need to think when you're list building, what's my order control? Do I need the engagement protocol so that I am able to move and fire and make progress across the board? Or if I don't need that, then can I take one of the cheaper upgrades like defensive or attack, which gives you precise? If you're going to be attacking, take the attack protocol because it gives you precise too. So the aims that you have are even better. I still like HE shells best on attacks. So that's the truth of what I believe. I'm sticking to it. Empire had some adjustments, and we've got the lat stuff further down there. With the Gav being kind of similar to the Persuader, it's cheaper to get out there, and it can transport things, but it does die faster than the ATSD, and it doesn't have the same sort of dice pool. ATSD, they dropped its points really, really nice. Looking at like this one down here, I know it's not as points efficient on defense, but I think it's worth it when you're getting that sort of an attack pool. I still think the Hammer's pilot is better than Weiss. It's pronounced Vice, someone says in the comments. It's fine. Say what you want. No one cares. But the advantage to the general from Endor is that he has Field Commander now. So you could have a double ATS. You don't have to pick. You can have both of these. So have one that's extra good at shooting, and then have your Field Commander, who's also very good at shooting, and really have a vehicle-heavy list that gets taken down by little furry Ewoks with catapults and trees. So you could do that. All right. The LAT is cheap to get points to get defensive rating on the table. It's not good at attacking, but it transports Vader places, and that's what it's for. I know it can transport a whole unit, but people used it in round robin to transport Vader to great effect. Now that Vader has been updated and can have like burst of speed and stuff like that, it's way less necessary to take the LAT, but it's still not bad to take it. So anyway, you do you. Respect to the people who tried to run the LAT as an offensive unit to try it out. It just, I don't think anybody advanced who tried that in the round robin. I could be wrong about that. I apologize if you're watching this and like, I advanced and I ran, aggressive LATs that were firing. That's awesome if you did it, but you'd be an exception to the rule. And then, so GAR have access to the LATs, which are cheap for them to get out, but they don't really have a unit. I mean, it's, I guess some people were putting Anakin in them, and that's okay, I think, but they don't work out for clones as well. The ISP is the new one for them, and it's super cheap to put on the table. As soon as you until you put an attacky weapon on it. It has, by the way, I included this, but it has no natural weapons, so you're not going to run that. So keep that in mind. You're not going to run that. I like the beam. I like the beam on the saber too, though. So I don't know. I know in on the table people are not running beam with this much success, but I don't know why. JJ of JJ's Juggernaut explained it to me at one point, and he said it basically had to do with having enough, because it surges to hit, having enough hits to get past the cover that things tend to be in is usually the problem. People usually take it with the laser, and the laser's good too. I'd be really curious about the ISP with the beam. Unfortunately, I feel like people are not excited about the infantry support platform, which is too bad. It sucks that people work hard on something like that, and then it comes out and to have people like, it's not that good. I think it was maybe in the movie. Was it in Clone Wars? I don't know. What's ISP stand for? A buddy of mine literally didn't remember that it was being released. A buddy who plays clones. So anyway, I still love the Gonk droid for Rebels. You put the Gonk on the X-34 on the AA5, and it's great. It's better than the Jockey, and they're better pilots now than the Jockey. I don't think people should be running the Speeder Jockey anymore. But I don't include all of the various upgrades on the AA5, like the Tactician. Not because I don't think you should have it. I think you should always have the Tactician, which then increases the price and makes these less efficient. I understand, but there's too many combinations. It's already like too long. Rebels have a lot of options in general right now, which is good for them. But yeah, I like all of the heavies look good, and the T-47 down here is still very points efficient. And when you look at the offensive capabilities of what you see, you can see that the X-34 and the T-47 can both punch real hard. X-34 with rifle and ion right now, because they dropped those points, real good. So I think people should run it. Let's look at the most offensively efficient heavy. I've got it as the Persuader with the attack HE shells. You jump down here. So again, GAR all the way down there. But GAR, if you pair this with Padme, and it can fire support and that sort of thing. Also, there's a cool pilot for them where if you fire support, they get surge to crit. And I didn't include those numbers, but sure, if we change these numbers to surge to crit, they're gonna shoot up a lot. So if you can regularly pull that off, that's great. But yeah, lots of cool heavies. Things in heavy land seem pretty good still. All right, and this one is like the least important. The commanders and operatives, you can't. I don't try to put their command cards in here. So you have to take all of these with a huge grain of salt. Like just looking at wounds efficiency and getting things out. We got Grievous. We got Iden with her droid. We got Yoda. We've got K2. We've got Han at the top of the list. Do think that's interesting. Sabine with her shield and the Darksaber and stuff like that. Yeah, that's what you got. R2 still a cheap way. He's still cheap for the wounds plus what he does. I like his points now. For the record, I think 55 is good. It's a good tax to bring him. I think he's still in every list with vehicles and in most other lists, but I think it's not so much that he has to be in it. Has to be in every list anymore. One thing that I do want to look at here is the melee ratings of characters. Who hits the hardest? Because a lot of the best melee characters are, of course, the Jedi, and we've got Vader, and then Vader pre-Vadering are the best attack pools still, followed by his son, followed by Vader, and then we get down to Grievous and that sort of thing. So those are the attack pools. Yoda, really interesting because he has his ranged attacks are pretty cool too. I think we'll see how that comes out. Looking at who shoots the hardest, the snipers are skewing those numbers because it's taking into account that they can fire at range 4 and 5. The problem is that you really usually don't want these at range 4 and 5. You tend to have them moving up so they can use their command cards and interact with objectives and things like that. So, a little asterisk on these. Bosk, though, does want to stay back and does still hit like a truck. So there's that. Okay, I think I have spoken enough. I think you have listened. If you are still here with me, that was like a podcast on accident of content. So if that's the case, cool. I hope that was useful. And thank you for being here and hanging out with me. Please don't hesitate to ask questions about this in Discord, the Facebook group, with comments. I usually respond to comments on YouTube videos pretty quickly, so that we can have dialogue about learning new things in Star Wars Legion. That's what we're all about on Team Relentless. Speaking of Team Relentless, I'm Mbweha. You can call me Ben of Team Relentless. And this has been an announcement and an accidental podcast about the tool, the unit comparison tool being updated. Quick note, the synergy tool is in the process of being updated. So if you're someone who knows what that is, just know that sometime this month it's going to have been updated as well. But right now it should not be used. And if you don't know what it is, then don't worry about it, because right now you shouldn't use it because it's old meta. So it's don't do it. So, alrighty, I will I'll talk to y'all later. Okay, bye.